Welcome to MindForce. I'm your host, Nate Scheer, and this is the show where love, life, and learning come together. Your mind is what matters most here. Today we have Troy Fontana, a wonderful recommended guest from another awesome human, Dr. Eric Bermudez. Today we'll be talking about transforming pain and trauma into superpowers, Troy's method for turning life's hardest moments into sources of strengths. Overcoming personal and professional adversity, how Troy navigated the collapse of his business, his divorce, and his near-death experience, and finding purpose through trials, the deep insight and purpose Troy discovered through these difficult experiences. Troy, I'd like to give you the floor and give us a little bit about yourself.
No, thank you. Well, it's an honor to be here with you, brother. I'm excited to share. And my journey comes from personal development and coaching and helping people through a variety of ways. I always kind of focus on the three main areas of health, wealth, and relationships. And so anytime I get a chance to share what's really been my life's work, and that's just kind of understanding our own uniqueness as humans and this incredible, weird, fantastic journey we are all on. And, just helping people to navigate that, because there is no blueprint. There is no roadmap. I think we're all just trying to figure it out on the way. And I've learned some unique little insights and secrets. And so I hope to share those with people, and I hope it helps. And, I'm also a student as well through this journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're all trying to get through this crazy thing called life, one day at a time. It's interesting, life and parenthood and these different things. I know when people get pregnant and they ask, questions and whatnot, what's your biggest piece of advice? Like, I don't know, try your best.
Yeah, you'll figure
There's
it
no
out.
book. I mean, there are a lot of books written, but everyone thinks they have it figured out. So I think try your best, and I guess you'll find out at 18 if it worked out or not.
Right.
In the spirit of conversation, I wanted to see if you had any questions for me before we kick off the interview.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you're on the creative platform. And, anytime you're putting yourself out there, you open yourself up to a variety of different energies and emotions and different things. And also to go through a journey takes consistency, and it kind of reveals the light that the one thing promised to us is the process alone, not necessarily the outcome. And so I'm curious, anytime I see somebody who's on a journey of creativity like this, what has it been like for you navigating the process and the journey? And how do you stay focused on still keeping your eye towards the destination?
Okay, I'll answer the second part first, kind of out of order. But one thing I did that was super beneficial, and I'm super glad I did, and I'm kind of sad about it now, is what I did was I built up a large library of episodes, because I knew being in the military or going out and doing things with the family, I wanted to make sure I had that balance. And so I think I had 12 different episodes recorded before I went live, went out to the directories and things like that. And it's really worked out. It is kind of unfortunate with the move out here to the United Kingdom. I'm completely depleted at this point. Now I'm kind of am on week to week. And so the week to week does, I think, take a little bit of the fun out of it, because it feels more like you have to. So I'm hoping to get a little bit more of a stockpile again. Not probably 12 again, but some type of buffer room where one or two in between, so I don't feel like I have to hit every week. So that's that second part. So that was really good. I'm glad I did that. And then the first part, coming to the creative space, I think something that's super interesting to me is learning about yourself. Because personally, I don't consider myself a very creative person. My wife, she does the Cricut and makes stuff for the teachers, and she is like making stuff all the time, cups and shirts. And I mean, if you gave her an idea, she'd probably be able to figure it out by the end of the day. But then on the other end, I feel like I go to work and make spreadsheets and, I'm more analytical and processing through that. So the one thing I was most nervous about was the creative aspect. And it's funny because that's what I think I enjoy the most. I like writing the scripts and thinking about who I'm about to meet and what can I ask, and going through all these different hypotheticals and things. And I think that's so awesome, because I think it uses a different part of your brain. So I do use, the organization and leadership, and I'm medical admin by trade. So I'm trying to run the hospital and make sure things are going well. And so I use all that like hard, analytical skills and things like that. And when you're at the end of the day and you're tired and things like that, it feels like I almost get to switch over and then have a little more fun. And I'm editing videos and I'm putting music in and the captions in and make sure they're right. And so I think that creative aspect is really fun and just so ironic, where that was what I was most worried about. Does that make sense?
Totally. I can relate to a lot of that, actually. and it's very
Yeah.
revealing process. Like I like how you mentioned it's almost like your own self-growth journey through that, right? You uncover things about yourself that you didn't know really were there, or maybe you were excited about or enjoy. And that's, yeah, I can totally relate. Very cool.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And one thing like that's, I guess we're getting to the dark stuff pretty quick or the deep stuff pretty quick, but one of my biggest fears in life, the number one is the breakdown of my mind.
Mm,
For some reason, I'm okay with the breakdown of my body. I feel like you got
mhm,
to get to a walker and you got to get old at some point physically. That just feels right for some reason. But mentally, I just don't want to be gone. And so when I went to Guam, I started a thing and I've tried to uphold it and it's been going well so far. I need to figure out what I'm going to do for out here, but I pick a skill and I work on something. So I got my dive master in scuba out in Guam. And then when I got to Edwards, my next base, I got my class A skydiving license. And so it's something I'm physically working and thinking and keeping those skills. And so my thought is if I keep the mind going, I have less of a chance later on to have that deteriorate.
mhm,
It's terrifying, right?
mhm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, it's both, right? I think the mind and the body have so much connection. And, when you have a healthy body, it helps have a healthy mind and vice versa. And, I'm very similar. I'm always trying to stretch my comfort zones because that helps us to expand. And also, I believe there's almost like an attack on both our mind and our bodies. There's so many
Mm.
distractions that are so easy to access. There's so much toxicity in our food and in our environments. And these things are like so easy for you to grab onto. And I don't want that stuff, man. I don't want to be filled with those poisons and toxins. And so it's both mentally and physically. And so I'm always kind of keeping watch, right? Because I want the same thing. I want this body, this mind to last as long as possible. And one thing that is cool about what you're doing, the work that I do, is this creative process leaves behind these little imprints that for me, I have 3 kids. And so right now dad's cool, but not super cool, and then later on maybe they'll watch it and they'll be like, yeah, dad was like doing some cool stuff, man. Like right on. So these are all like little legacy pieces that we're also leaving behind. I think that's something that's really unique about this particular time of life.
Yeah, and one thing that's really cool is I recorded some when I was at my professional military education. I captured some stories from people, and it wasn't until later I listened to another podcast by Josh White, Hero Front, and he was capturing stories from different people, and he captured a story of Pitzenberger, the one that had like a heroic save, and then his dad, and so through the generations and whatnot. But he was able to capture the story, a couple generations after the person actually passed and whatnot. But he captured that story. And so now going forward, anyone can listen to that recording, even though the person is passed. And that was just so powerful. And it wasn't, it didn't dawn on me initially, but like these are out there. And if it helps one person along the way, that's, it's all worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah. Little timepieces we're leaving. You know.
Yeah, it's awesome. So let's transition into the interview. The first question I have for you is can you share that moment when you realized your deepest pain could become a superpower?
Yes. I essentially was at a place in life where I had what's called agoraphobia. I had experienced so much trauma. Agoraphobia is where you have like anxiety. So you have so much anxiety, you're afraid to leave any space that you consider safe. And for me, it was my house. I was like stuck inside. And I just didn't know what was going on. I'm like, I'm not this person I used to be. Just overwhelmed with fears. I would quickly just go down these rabbit holes of just the worst case scenario. And for whatever reason, I ended up making this little like makeshift meditation center in my office. And by no one's like recommendation, not, at least that I can remember, is just like I was drawn to this, like, I gotta like just figure something out. And I started at the time, I really didn't even know what meditation was. But I kind of sit with these different like little energies and energy, even energy at the time was a weird and obscure topic. But I would just sit with these, with my mind and my own space. And I would kind of become more present to the moment. And I would realize these little narratives that I would carry in my mind, um, that were kind of, now I understand more to be these core wounds, these core traumatic events, like one of the things I share about in my book is how I had a business that I lost, a very successful business at one point that then I lost, had to file bankruptcy and all these different things. And one of the first stories and narratives I started to realize was I carried a lot of shame and guilt around that. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says something's wrong with me. And I felt a lot of shame around that. Like, how could you let that happen? How could you let it collapse and da-da-da? And then I felt like the heaviness, the burden I carried with that energy of shame. And I was like I could like feel it. I'm like, damn, like yuck, like gross. It's very this gummy, heavy energy. And and then I started to like reframe it. And I didn't even know what a reframe meant. I would kind of look at it like, actually this happened in 2008, 2009 during the recession. I was very young. I had no idea what a recession even was. I remember actually driving in my car once and being like, what's an economy? How can an economy like go bad? Like, I don't get it. And then I started to look at it, the other side of the coin, and be like, man, you did something that was really unique. You really stretched and challenged yourself. You really led a lot of people. You really expanded and grew who you were. You really like stepped into a lot of areas that were uncomfortable for you at the time. That's really awesome. And I was like, damn, like, yeah, that's a whole nother way to look at this. And I like started like training my brain in that moment to see that side of the story. And like, man, you did something really cool. And then I realized in that moment, for something to be a failure, you have to agree to it in your mind. And it was in that moment that I switched, like, that wasn't a failure. That was like a really dope, epic experience, a beautiful journey that you went on. Way to go, Troy. And in that moment, quite literally, I felt like this release of that heavy, dense, dark energy. It was like, I could like feel it in my body. I actually remember my body, it would do this for quite a while. Like, it would like release this tension. I get like these pops. I'd be like, ah, damn. Whoa, man. I was very stiff and tight during this time. I could feel these releases. And I was like, wait a second. Like, there's something there. That's a superpower. And so what I believe we often do as humans is we get stuck in these negative narratives, these traumatic narratives. And as we release them and change them, then they become our strengths. And so I realized that, dude, there's nothing to worry. Like, there is no such thing as failure. You either win or you learn to win. Like, that's it. I have a section in my book about that too. Like, you win or you learn to win. You're just extracting the value from it and you move on. And so I had been held back by that experience for so long, like many, many years. Part of what led to that agoraphobia. I was afraid to take any more risk. I was afraid to go spend $10 on something, because I was like, oh, I can't mess up again. And as I released that energy, changed those narratives, I started putting myself back out there again. I've always been drawn to entrepreneurship. I got back in the game, started doing more of this and that, and that spiraled into positivity. And I was like, wow, I'd been held captive by that narrative for so long. Like, I'm not going to let that happen anymore. And I went on this journey for years of like unpacking these different narratives.
That's so interesting. I remember Simon Sinek talked about perspective. And one of the things he talked about was he would go and interview people at different locations. So he went to a location where people were getting ready for like a board meeting and they said they were nervous. And he's like, well, what are your physical symptoms? He's like, oh, sweaty palms and a racing heart rate and a little bit of sweat. He's like, oh, okay. And then he went to the Olympics and he asked the athletes like what their symptoms were and how they were feeling. Like, oh, well, my palms are a little sweaty and my heart is racing. And he's like, but how do you feel? And their response was excited.
Nice.
Because
Yeah.
they had trained their whole lives. They're there, they're ready to prove themselves, they're ready to do it. And so the symptoms are exactly the same, but how you look at it and the perspective of what you're about to go into is completely different. So the person going to the board meeting could be like, hey, I'm excited. I'm not nervous. I'm excited. That word completely, and you could say, oh, just get hung up on words, but that self-talk and, all those things you're doing to yourself internally. I mean, it's not just words. Those are powerful at that point.
Yeah. We give meaning to everything. We do that, right? And can be
Yeah.
a positive or the negative. And as I changed the meaning behind a lot of things, it changed my life quite literally.
Yeah, that perspective. That's interesting. So could we back up real quick and give a little bit of foundation? We talked a little bit about significant losses and things like that. Could you give us a rundown, not to go down, negative
Yeah.
memory lane, but near death and some of these things. Can you kind of walk through some of that so we have that foundation as we walk through the rest of this?
Yeah, yeah. Like after high school, just kind of lost in the world. I was very athletic, into sports, all those different things, and there was no home base for those activities anymore. And I kind of just wandered aimlessly for a while, and then I stumbled across working at a gym, which led to getting into personal training, which then led to me wanting to open my own gym. I ended up doing that. All of that's its own powerful, beautiful journey. It was not an easy thing to do going through those steps. And when I went into the fitness industry, I actually became very successful very fast, like unexpected. But next thing you know, I'm speaking at industry events. I'm runner up for personal trainer of the year. I'm publishing these nationally published articles. Everything just seems to be on the up and up. And that's when I opened my own gym. I ended up expanding the gym into 3 different locations. I was reading Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and I was like, man, I got to buy these locations. So I buy the actual physical buildings. I buy a condo on the golf course. I'm driving a BMW. I'm in my 20s. Recession hits, and I lose everything. Car repossessed, business gone, home gone, buildings gone. And, when men become broke, they often become broken. And I was certainly that. And I was just like wrecked. And then I went through a little series of trying to like come back and reinvent myself. And because of that trauma I was carrying, I hadn't healed it. I hadn't looked at it. I just tried to move on. I would repeat similar cycles. And so I'd get in partnership, like business partnership, maybe with the wrong person, and I'd get taken advantage of or betrayed here, all these different things. But I slowly build myself up. During this time, I had met the woman of my dreams. We get married, start to have kids. And so I'm carrying this like weight of trying to figure out life while masked and buried in deep trauma, PTSD, all those things. When you're carrying a lot of trauma, you have a lot of triggers. Like everything was a trigger to me around me. People, doing anything new, anything unique, anything different. I was afraid of it, but I was trying my best. And I have these responsibilities of taking care of a family. And it was overwhelming. And at some point, I reached this kind of like rock bottom moment where I was like, dude, I can't figure this out. And maybe my kids would be better off without me. And
Mhm.
that, fortunately, rock bottom moment, sometimes what we need, because we get a little bounce. And I got a little bit of bounce, and I grabbed that bounce, and my world started to change. And that's where I really leaned into like gratitude and some of what I just talked about earlier, going into myself and reframing these stories and go, wait a second, does it have to be like this? And gradually making my life better, becoming more present to the moment. And all these things helped. And when I got a taste of that, I went like full bore into it. Like I literally spent years kind of reframing and meditating, become present, and learning so many things from a firsthand experience, right? Rather than just reading it from a book, I was actually living it and feeling it. That's when I like, okay, this energy, maybe there is something behind it. This whole healing concept, maybe there is something behind it. And my life got much better. And that's when I was like, I got to go share this with other people. And so I kind of transitioned from the fitness industry into more personal development coaching. And that started to take off. Having gone through all those challenges, there was a moment where my wife and I at the time kind of just looked at each other and were like, man, this is just different. And maybe there's an expiration date to this experience. And then that led to separation and divorce. There wasn't like doors slamming and fighting. It was just this, hey, we're on a different path now. And
Mm.
we're still very close. We talk almost every day. And but right after that experience, because that was still challenging nonetheless, I had this near death experience where a friend who I was very close to was having a, let's call it, I don't fully know, a deep mental episode. I didn't know that he, presumably was supposed to be medicated and had all this different stuff. I didn't know him for that long. We had trained martial arts together. He was a very skilled and trained martial artist. Went missing. End up finding him in the woods and not clothed when I find him. And he kind of calls me in like he's hurt and wounded. And when I go to help him, He pulls me in and attacks me, uh, literally tries to kill me and bites off half my ear. I had to watch my ear fall, hit my leg. I took a ton of
Mm.
punches to my head and tried to choke me from behind, which would have been the end of my life. And, I'll save you the details, but it was like at one moment I couldn't see, my eyesight went out, and there was multiple points where I was like, dude, I have to get through this or I'm done. I'm dead. And thank goodness I was able to get out and escape. I ended up taking off and running. And when he went to grab me, my shirt ripped off and it caused me like to pause. And I got away from that. Both of those, the divorce and that, were in a close time period. And, you know, I had already been through that moment with the business and had stared down the victim mentality and what it feels like when you like everything is, oh, this happened to me and I'm the victim and everything's so tough and blah, blah. I just knew that wasn't going to work. And so I was really able to grab these fairly recent experiences. Like this is not that long ago, like a year, these both kind of happened in, and reframe them quite quickly and go, it's what I make it. And it's going to be powerful. It's going to be good. When I'm with my kids, fully engaged, we're there, we're having a good time. I've come full circle with even this experience and have, I want this other person to heal, grow, and I've been able to accept a level of forgiveness and understanding and just realize that any bitterness I carry is not going to serve me. And so why carry it? And not that I don't have my moments of just being a human where I'm like, I want revenge or I want this, but then I'm like, that ain't going to do it, man. That ain't going to do it. Let me let that energy go. Let me let it out. Let me let it out. Forgive, move on. That's between them and God, him and God, whatever. Let me move on. Let me let it go. And that letting go
Yeah, just
energy can be really powerful. And
yeah, it just takes from you, doesn't it?
yeah, man, it ain't
Takes
easy.
from you holding on to it.
That's right. That's right. It is. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is like, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. And I really
Mm.
believe like they moved on. They're doing that. They're doing whatever. Like, let it go, man. And you don't even have to necessarily forgive. Just let it go. Sometimes that's better. Just let it go. Move on.
Yeah, that makes sense. So after you experienced all these significant losses, what kept you motivated through all that?
Man, that's a good
That's a lot
question.
of hits.
Yeah, it was a lot of hits. It was a lot of hits. It was, I had gone through enough to know that these moments, if you stay in the pocket, right? If you like work through it, if you find the silver lining per se, right? If you just keep with that, and it may take a while, who knows? There'll be beautiful things that come from it. And I just knew that like I had to keep going forward. I had to find the best in this. And that would open up other opportunities, other doors, other windows. And it's what led me to write my book, right? Which became a bestseller. It was like, and like even with that, I had talked about writing the book. I had already written one, but I was going to write another one. And I was like, I'll get to it. Well, when this happened, I'm like, let's do it. Right. And so I took the action with my kids. We spent this whole summer going to national parks, like all these amazing, the Grand Canyon up into Oregon and California, all these cool places that we wouldn't have gone. I would have just waited like, one day we'll get there. And so that is part of the silver lining, is that clarity of life and what matters and where I want to go. And, being at the point of the spear per se, rather than being a passenger seat, I was like, no, we're doing it now. We're cutting through this. We're going to get there. And I didn't have that gift before necessarily. And so when we stick in the pocket with these things, there is beauty. They do become our superpowers. And I think I got a lot more of beauty left in life. And I'm looking forward to that.
That's good stuff. You use that negative energy and all that stuff to really fuel and give that motivation. It's interesting, hindsight. It's really it's good and it's kind of painful at the same time. Like I
Yeah.
reflect back, I lost my dad a few years ago, and you had kind of brought up like the traveling and whatnot. One thing, when he was diagnosed with cancer, I wish we would have just got on an airplane, went to Rome, saw the Colosseum, like threw a dart at the map and, set out to just go check some stuff out. But he was adamant, I'll beat it and then we'll go. And so that kind of goes back to your, point, like later on, or, maybe in a little bit. Not that you have to like go YOLO and like, not be wise with your money and things like that. But I do think life is pretty short, and you should capitalize on the moments you can. You don't know if you're going to have them again or not. And so really wish we would have just taken the trip and gone anywhere, really, somewhere, pretty bizarre, or somewhere, that, most people don't go to. But unfortunately, we didn't get to capitalize on that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry to hear that, brother. That,
Yeah, it's the way it goes.
and it's part of the lesson, right? Because it sounds like maybe you have kids as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then that's part of what we can grab from these experiences. Okay. Then I'm going to do this with my kids, or I'm not going to forget. I'm going to take action here. And it turns something that maybe doesn't mean it's not painful, doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but it gives some light to it. Like even the near-death experience, it's like, thank you for that gift. I wouldn't have had that gift of certainty and action, the degree that I have it, had that not happened. So thank you. And I'm only going to choose to stare at that. I'm only going to look at that. I have this now. I have this now. Let's go. Let's rip it. We're here. We're here. Like, then that becomes a superpower. And that's one of my superpowers. Like, I can cut through the noise quickly, right? I'm very clear on how I choose to spend my time. It's a gift.
Well, that makes sense. I wanted to ask, I think you just touched on it, but I don't know if you want to expand at all. How did that near-death experience really change that outlook on life and your purpose?
Yeah, it did a few things that I'm aware of already, but I'm sure it's going to continue to create more in the future. I have a friend who also went through a near-death experience, and he's like, dude, it'll change you. It'll keep unpacking these little lessons throughout life. And some things I noticed right away were that certainty, like, okay, like the expiration date has already expired. Go. The shot clock is already clicked. Go. Take the shot. Like, do the thing. And so it's brought that level of clarity and certainty with how I choose to spend my time. And it's also created this is a little unique and a little deep, but like, I don't need validation outside of myself. It still feels good when someone's like, hey, way to go, good job, appreciate you, right? It feels good. That's to be human. But I certainly am not looking for that. Like, I'm very like, this is what matters. We're doing this. I don't need your approval, your opinion, your thoughts, your applause. I'm just doing it. This is how I want to live my life. This is how I want to choose to spend my time. And there's a superpower in that, because when you're thinking about the other things, the validation outside of yourself, you actually adjust your trajectory in life to find the applause, to meet their approval, to match their opinion. And to me, that's just wasted time and energy now. I'm like, nah, like, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm rolling. That's it. Like, I gave a speech recently, and I mean this with humility, but like afterwards, they're like, man, that was incredible. Great job. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, no. And like, and then at the same time, I was like, because that's all I got. Like, this is it. Like, whether you liked it or didn't like it, doesn't change anything. You know what I mean? Like, I can only give you what I have. That's it. And what's cool about that is you get a very authentic speaker in the moment, because I'm not doing it for their approval, for their applause, for their validation. Like, yeah, I'm just sharing from my heart. So that's it. And I trust that. I trust what I'm going to share. And that's all I got. So whether you liked it or didn't, cool. I also want to I'll take some feedback, and I'm going to try to get better and do this. And I'm self-reflective, but the reality is, this is what I got. And that's us with life. This is what I got. Of course I want to get better. I'm improving things, but we spend way too much time looking at that. And that causes us then we don't take action. But if we would just take the action, tweak the dial along the way, we'd get much further.
Yeah, that's another example. You mentioned two or three different things. It's really your ability to cut through things. So did you feel that you were, people pleasing and things before, and now you have this level of freedom where it just doesn't matter? Or were you always kind of like that?
I think I struggle with people pleasing and perfectionism. I mean, like, look on my phone right now. I've got probably 20 something unanswered voicemails, 30 something unanswered texts. My social media is loaded with unanswered things. And it's weird because it's almost at my brain. I'm like, dude, I just don't have time to waste on these things, and it's even hard for me to organize now, but it's like, man, the people that really matter are going to get my attention, my focus. The things in life that really matter are get my attention and focus. And at the same time, I'm really realizing like how much time I wasted maybe entertaining someone. And it's not that I have no ill will or negative feelings towards maybe someone I haven't, hey, let's go meet up for coffee. It's like when I say yes to coffee with you, I'm saying no to time with my kids.
Hmm.
Right. And it's just like I have that level of clarity right now and certainty. And it's cool. It's okay. Right. That might loosen up over time. I don't know. Maybe I'll have a little more time for that or this or that. Right. But it's like, I just really am clear on what is going to make the difference today. Like for me, it really boils down to, I'll tell you my three things. My three things are adding value to the world. So what you and I are doing right now, hopefully, is doing that. It's adding value to the world, right? Celebrating life. So then I still go, hey, my friends, let's go out, let's hang out, let's do this, let's go shoot hoops, whatever. Yeah, let's celebrate living, let's celebrate life, and then spending time with my kids. If it don't really fall into those three categories, you won't see me doing it.
Hmm.
And that's just kind of
Interesting.
came through this experience of, that before I wouldn't have had maybe the clarity to see that.
That makes sense. I wanted to ask you a question. It's going backwards, but I'm just really curious. When you first opened, you mentioned that you lost a successful business and you specifically said successful. So I'm curious, do you feel that fall and the shame and everything that went along with that was because of how quickly it came up? Like if it would have been a mediocre and you lose it, it's like, it's
Yeah.
mediocre or whatever. But you
Yeah.
were like on the up and up. Like how did you process all that? Like the quick up and then the quick down.
Yeah, that was, I mean, because I was still really young, so I didn't have a lot of like mental frameworks. That's why, like, you know, what stuff we're talking about, having these I didn't understand trauma and mental models and all these different things that maybe I would now. So when it happened, it was just like, wait, what? And for a young man who's in his ego, which I was at the time, I was those things. So I was my BMW. I was the successful trainer who's talking at these different industry events. I was, whatever, all these different things. And so when I lost those things, I lost myself. But that's also when I, quote, found myself in a way too, right? Because other things started to matter more. I lost, certain friends all of a sudden are gone and vanished, right? Like, oh, you're not cool anymore because you're not fancy. And all right, well, I now I have a really good radar for who's a real authentic person, right? And I appreciate these different things. Not that someone who has a lot of success can't be that. They absolutely can. I have a lot of people like that in my life. They absolutely can. But this helps you sift through the noise. And it probably was because I just didn't. It also seemed when that success was taking place, strangely, it happened almost like it was a byproduct of just what was going on. Like it just kind of came with what I was doing. I'm like, I want to open a business. Let me figure out how. I was able to figure it out, and then it's successful, and oh okay, yeah, I'll go speak at this thing. Oh, I can apply here, and they accepted me, and it just like happened. There wasn't a lot of thought to it necessarily. And then when it disappeared, it kind of created that same, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, now, who am I now without all these things? And then now reinventing these things and being on this path of helping people just in a different way, it's like I appreciate the entire process of the journey. And that really is what I focus on is the process now, because in that journey, it was all about the outcomes. I was never satisfied. When I got the new BMW, I was happy for 2 weeks. When I got the condo on the golf course, a few weeks. Everything was like to the next. And now I'm just like, every day I'm like, dude, great, grateful, man. Like, dope. Like I get to go, after a session or whatever, go for a walk in the park and it's raining today. Awesome. Epic. perfect, right? Like all of it, all good. And I appreciate and I'm grateful for all of it.
Yeah, I think there's different things between, I know we interchange a lot of words, but back to our point earlier, words are important and words
Yeah.
matter. And so I think there's different between like the word happy and joy or something like that. Like happiness, emotion comes and goes. You could be happy, you could be sad later, but joy or, maybe another synonym or for that. But then it's just in you. You're happy, you're joyful, nothing's going to take you down or things like that. So I think sometimes it's funny, like, oh, happy or joy or, same difference. I'm like, sometimes like you can be happy and that will come and go. But when you find the right things and your purpose and things like that, I think that switches from happiness, that emotion that can come and go and transitions into joy. So yeah, that's interesting.
Well, and that to go, like we talked about a little bit earlier was like, that's why the struggle and the challenge should be embraced is because it's going to bring that out of you. It's like you don't know how great a steak tastes until you starve. You don't know how good
Mm.
it feels to have success until you've been in poverty. And so when you go through those moments, right, it's like, we've had the flu. And you're like, damn, I was taking like my health for granted, right? And then you come out of it and you're like, man, ooh, I feel good. And so it's the same thing with the struggles in life. Like, all right, this is here now. But when I get through it, I'll have a whole nother texture for life, a whole nother reality that I will exist in. And it will change you. Like when I feel, to your point, when I feel gratitude, like I really feel gratitude. And before, when I had all that stuff, dude, I was not grateful. I could tell you, oh, I'm grateful, but I didn't have I couldn't taste it. You know what I mean? There was no texture to it. Now I taste it. I feel it.
It's interesting, like some of the smaller moments in life that hit you, because I actually wrote about this on Facebook. I mean, it's been a couple months now, but I got into disc golf, and so it might be trivial or a smaller thing, but it's interesting because I was on the disc golf course and I was putting, and I missed it, and for a split second, I was like, I wish that would have been easier, but for
Mhm.
some reason, I stopped, and it dawned on me when you make that longer putt, when you make the birdie, when you make the eagle, whatever it may be, it's awesome and you feel amazing because it is difficult.
Yes.
And so I kind of like was bummed out at myself and my own thinking for a split second because I was like, you don't want it to be easy because then when you do make it, it's like, oh, it's easy, it doesn't matter. I need that to be difficult. So when that connects and I do the right thing, I was like, oh, I mean, kind of silly that it's just a, small hobby, but it was just one of those things like you read things in books, but the way I love to learn the best is like examples where it happens right in front of you because
Yep.
I experience all those emotions like, oh, I wish that would have been easier. I would have made it. But no, I want it to be hard. So when it hits the chains and I'm like, yes, I did it.
Yes.
That was hard. So
Yes.
interesting.
Good job. Very cool.
Yeah, the next question I had for you, do you have any specific practices or things that help transform this trauma into growth? Do you have like daily things you do or weekly or things that people could do in their own lives?
Yeah. That's a good question. Daily, I like to just get present. And so I always try to start my morning with just a little bit of like coming to center, right? You wake up and we're like already distracting ourselves. We're reaching for the different things. And so it's like get that calm, present, centered experience, like where you literally feel into your body. Remember, the body is always in the present moment. The mind is trying to predict the future based out of the past. There's no presence in that. So the body brings us to the present moment. And the breath in particular is a great way to do it. So connecting to
Mm.
your breath. Breath is always present. And then that helps you in day-to-day life. Say maybe I'm going into a situation where maybe some nerves are coming up. I'll feel my shoulders roll up, my voice will tighten up, my breath will get a little shallow. I'm like, calm it down. We're good. What are we feeling? And then, yeah, that's just energy. And to your point about the Olympians earlier, it's like I can redirect that energy. Okay, that's just energy. Why am I afraid of it? Let's change the direction of it and be excited about the opportunity of what could be. There we go. Now we're flowing. Let's do it. Right. Um, so a daily thing like that. One of my practices that really helped through that experience of my own healing and something I share with people now is breath work. And it's kind of, it sounds weird. Oh, you help people breathe? No, it's like it's called holotropic breath work. You could look it up. and it's been around, I believe, actually for probably centuries. But it's a practice of deep breathing, and you get into this like state, this non-ordinary state, where actually a lot of it's your body's own medicine cabinet essentially, and a lot of like energy and trauma, and you get a lot of clarity around certain things. But I've done this in like I'll rent out these big rooms and have people come in by the dozens, and we'll turn music on. And I'll lead them through this deep breathing, and then kind of guide them through this process of letting go trauma. And I kind of work through these different energies of fear, guilt, shame, and understanding the energy of our heart. And it's a really powerful practice, but breath work can be really healing. And again, it's your body's own medicine cabinet. It's just a way to tap into it. Probably a bigger topic that we can tap into at some point, but it's
Yeah,
powerful.
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
I'd love to get more into meditation and things like that. It
Mhm.
just feels like the world is going faster and faster than ever before. We can Google any answer in a second, drive through food in minutes. And we always want faster. But sometimes, actually, a lot of times, I feel like we probably need to get closer to slowing down, not speeding up. But unfortunately, that's the way the world is going. But I think that's some good practice. It's like you said, trying to, stay calm and center yourself in the morning. Because I think most people, first thing, you reach for your phone and you're already distracted right off the bat.
Notifications and
Yeah,
yeah.
it's always something. Next question I had, can you describe the biggest challenge you face in that rebuilding your life after your business collapsed?
Yeah.
What was that way back up?
Yeah. A lot of it was, I think as men, we isolate, and I wish I would have shared what I was going through sooner and been more vocal about it. You know, I think men, we struggle to be vulnerable, but remember, vulnerability with inactivity is weakness. Vulnerability with activity is actually strength. And so be willing
Hmm.
to take action and be vulnerable. Hey, I'm going through a hard time. I'm struggling with this, but I'm listening. I'm ready. What's up? Fill me in. I'll do it. And I wish I would have done more of that because I was ready to take action, but I just wasn't very vulnerable at the time. I kind of held it inside, and it made me sick, to be honest, in a lot of ways. And I just wish I would have known that it's okay. It was like those stories that I got into finally with meditation and coming inward. I wish I would have done that sooner and been like, dude, you were doing your best. You did awesome stuff. You helped a lot of people. Look how much you've grown, and get back out there. It's cool that you didn't fail. There's no losing. There is no failure. You're not a loser. Like, you're adopting these beliefs that don't have to be your beliefs. You can change that. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. So if I would have understood those things sooner, that would have helped a lot. Um, yeah, I think looking back, I created a lot of busyness for myself. I think we tend to do that. We tend to distract when we're struggling with things. I went back to school at the time, which I guess in a way it was good. I followed through with all of that, but it would have been more powerful had I just sat with that energy. Like, all right, let's work through this. Let's heal from this. And I could have made some more decisive decisions sooner that would have helped my life.
Yeah, I wish more people would realize that it takes adversity and things to get through things.
Mhm.
The example I like to use is WD-40 because it's in every household in the world. You know the label. You could probably go into like any country in the world and find WD-40, but it was the 40th recipe of that. So there was 39 of those
Oh,
that
wow.
failed. There was 39 of those that sucked and didn't do the thing they were supposed to do. It didn't grease the hinge or whatever, it was supposed to do. And then they got to 40 and then became a household name and everywhere in the world. But if they would have stopped at 38 or 39,
Yeah.
we'd never know there was WD-40.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting to me. Some of these things, reality TV and I think social media, we have just these challenges that are very difficult. You see Shark Tank or something like that. Someone pitches their idea, it gets picked up, it works. They probably had like 10 other businesses that didn't work before that.
Yeah.
They had multiple ideas, they had to go through some challenges. But I think the way that we're set up with social media and these different shows, you see the output. And I love the image when I see it on social media. It's like the iceberg and it shows all the work and late nights and dedication, everything in the bottom of that iceberg. But then, only people see the success, the that very tip, like, oh, must be nice. And
Yeah.
those comments they make, like, well, no, it was a lot of work. And even now, sometimes I get frustrated when I go to move or I get picked up for, a decent assignment or something that I wanted. And people, I don't think they mean anything negative by it at all. But sometimes on Facebook or different things, they'll say, lucky. I'm like,
Uh,
no, I've worked really
right.
hard
Yeah.
to get into the right rooms, to know the right people, to check the right boxes, to go to the right schools, the right classes. And I put myself in the position where luck, potentially comes in at the very end because I put myself in the correct position. But I had to put myself in the room by the late nights and the early mornings and the things that I did to help people and other things along the way that I can capitalize on that later. So lucky always, when I see it on the Facebook or on the computer, always just rubs me a little bit. Like, I don't think there's ill intent at all, but no, it's not lucky. It's getting yourself in the right spot, and then maybe luck does swing in at the end. But
Beautiful. Well said, brother. And that's exactly right. It's, it's like the hockey stick, right? It's, you don't see anything until you get to the end of the hockey stick, until you get that exponential growth pattern. And, I've done Brazilian jiu-jitsu now for like over a decade. If you watch me today, you'd be like, damn, like it looks like he's hardly moving and tapping people out and just dominating. But it took me that literally thousands of times of getting tapped out over and over and over. And then you finally reach a point where you're like, okay, I didn't get tapped out that much and more and more. And finally you tap out a few people. And it's just like then finally one day you're like, wait, I'm like actually starting to do pretty good at this, and it's not until the very end, until you're 9 and 10, whatever, that it takes off. And, I apply that same, I create a lot of content now. I've been putting a lot of attention and effort towards YouTube, and it's, man, I'll spend hours working on this and putting that out there, and man, nothing really took off. I'm like, this is really powerful. This was good. I spent so much time, but I'm like, dude, the outcome's not promised, homie. The process is. So I'm like, the process. I just stay focused on that. It's jujitsu, white belt. But one day you're blue belt. One day, it's like you just keep going, you keep going, you keep going. But it's got to be for you. It's got to be for, it's for me. It's for my kids when they watch it someday. And then pretty soon it's the collection of people that start to really enjoy it. And there is a collection of people now that are following along and enjoying it. But it all has its own journey. And it's about my own growth through it, right? When those days come up where I'm like, damn, did anyone hear that? Well, that's a lesson. What's up? Like, it's cool, right? Not about that. It's not about the fancy things. It's about the process, who you're becoming.
and it's interesting too. I saw something on Justin Nunnally. He's another active duty content creator. He lives in Florida, in Fort Walton Beach, where I used to live. And it was interesting because he had gotten like a card that he wanted, and he posted it on TikTok. And everyone was like, "Oh, must be nice. Like you're, taking our money for our views and all this stuff." And he came back, and it was really interesting. He was like, "I made content for 2 years. I would come home from active duty, my full-time job, and make content every night for 2 years before anything took off." So me now
Yeah.
because of the exponential spike where it shot off, and now there's hundreds of thousands of viewers or whatever his numbers are at. But he's like, I did 2 years of content with 2 viewers and 5 viewers, and
Right.
so yeah, now I get the car that I want and I've always wanted. But yeah, that was really interesting. I never really thought of it that way because at first I kind of the same thing. Oh, cool, you get the cool stuff. But it's
Yeah.
like he was grinding for the longest time, and
Yeah.
then it happened to take off. But like you had said earlier, consistency. He was just making stuff every day, trying to be, funny, and then everyone's like, "Oh, this is hilarious," and and then it
Mhm.
took off. But it takes a while.
That's right.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask, you had, some very extreme trauma and some, pretty difficult things to get through. Now that you're on a better path and, you're filled with joy and things like that, what are the things and the ways that you kind of process things to stay resilient now when stuff comes up? You said, you're happy when it rains and things like that, but how do you kind of tackle things now when they pop up?
Mm. Yeah, I think I stay rooted in that gratitude. I'm great. It's like, you know, earlier, and maybe when I was younger, for whatever reason, it's like the world is kind of outside of you. It's like these these bigger things you're moving towards. When this happens, then I'll have more happiness. When I get this, I'll have more happiness. And it's like going through those different experiences brought me to like a simplified, distilled version of what I'm actually grateful for. And so it's like literally the little things. Like I get up and like, oh man, I don't have to be anywhere right away. Well, that's really cool. Oh, I get to go out for the walk, or oh, I have great people to talk to throughout the day, or oh, my friends really love me and appreciate me, and I have family. It's like I can just keep going. It's like, but it's like before it was like this all got overlooked, and I was looking way outside of myself. And I believe that oftentimes one of our flaws as humans is we believe happiness exists outside of ourselves, and so we're always reaching. It's out there, it's out there, it's out there, and you'll never win that game until you come inward. And you're like, no, it's right here. I'm content with who I am, where I'm at. And then the beautiful thing about that is you create from that space. And so earlier when I had that quote, successful business, I was creating it from a space of like inadequacy. And then now as I create, it's like my cup's already full. It's even like in the Bible, right? It's a biblical verse about then your cup overfilleth. When your cup overfilleth, then it spills onto everyone around you. So what you get with Troy now is my cup's spilling out. And so it's like real genuine appreciation, genuine connection, genuine laughter. Like when I'm laughing with you, I'm in the moment with you. Like we're laughing, we feel it. When I'm creating something with you, same thing. We're creating it, man. This is the best. Like we get to do this versus like I'm entitled to create. I should be doing this. Like that's emptiness, So it's all kind of like distilled down to this simplified, I'm grateful for these things. So I can kind of just stay in these simple energies of gratitude, connection, appreciation, little things. I'm the weirdo who literally I'll walk down the street and I'll walk by like a rose bush and I'm like, oh, wow, that's gorgeous. And I'll sit there and I'll smell the roses. I can literally learn to smell the roses. It's a very real thing that I do. Yeah.
That's interesting. I feel like that happens as you get older. I don't know if that's like something that just comes with it. It's funny because I'll see like a really nice sunset or something, and I would just sit there. I'm like, do you see all the colors? I got the two little ones, 6 and 10. They're like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, no, look, the colors are like fading and it just looks amazing. Like this one looks different than any other one I've ever seen. And it just feels like the longer, I'm alive, it just seems like more things are super cool. I mean, even today, the jets, the F-35s are just obnoxiously loud. Were taking off and we were driving right beside them. And I had both the kids in the back seat. And I was like, don't you love that? Like the sound and the power you can feel. And they're like, can you make it quieter? Like, no, it's awesome. Well, yeah, I had the window down. I think he rolled his up. He's like, too loud. But I'm like, I don't know. The smaller things are just so amazing sometimes. And it's interesting how like changing your perspective, which we talked about earlier, but I saw something the other day, I think it was from a parent, and they were saying like initially they were like, I have to clean up the dishes. I have to make you food. I have to do whatever. But then if you think of like if you lost your kids, which would be horrendous, it would be flipped. Like, I wish I could get to make food. I wish I got the chance to clean up your plate or pick up your toys, or I wish I got that chance. So it's interesting. We talked also about, words having power, but I get to make food so you can go out and have a good day and your day at school is good because I provided you like the nourishment and things like that. So it is difficult. I mean, day in and day out, but I think reframing and changing that perspective is super important.
Massive. Yeah, life-changing.
Well, Troy, I wanted to give you a final takeaway, all these goodness, we shared today, or something from your book, or what's the thing you want listeners to take away from today's podcast?
Thank you, brother. Yeah, this has been great, man. I'd say, ideally, I don't want you to have to go through, maybe you have, right? And we all have our own battles and challenges, and many far worse than what I've been through, but it's not anything I would wish upon anyone. And so don't wait necessarily for those moments to find your best self, to really embrace life with gratitude. And I think some simple things you can do are to make conscious note of the things in your life that you're grateful for, to really retrain your brain to be grounded in the present moment and find gratitude for already that which already exists in your life. It's already there. You know, one of the stories I share in my book is I was one of my struggles, mental struggles I kind of carried was my kids all shared the same room in a small house. And I kind of wore that for a long time. Like, I'm not doing a good job as a dad and provider, and they all have to sleep in the same room. And then one day, like, it snapped. It just completely switched. I heard them all laughing, playing in their room, and I literally started to cry. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, they like this. They're going to look back and go like, dude, we all shared the same room. Remember that? And it was like, that's my own stupid story and narrative I have going on. And so to your point, you just mentioned like a perspective shift. And that really put me into gratitude. Like, dude, I get to be here with these kids. I get to have this experience. And so coming back to the present moment, ground yourself in gratitude, because then you exist from that space. It'll bring you into your heart. It'll quiet your mind. And that's a beautiful space to live and create from. And so that would be my wish for you. You don't need anything outside of yourself for that to happen. You can start that process today.
Perfect. Thank you, Troy. I encourage listeners to share their thoughts on social media. I got email, social media, Facebook, Buzzsprout, YouTube. We just moved out to TikTok, so doing short videos so you see 1 to 2 minute clips of Troy here pretty soon. But I love you all. See ya.